There's a good chance that most of us have at least heard of Schrodinger's famous cat that is allegedly both alive and dead at the same time. The internet, which seems to love all things cat-related, it has no shortage of memes referencing this cat. I have found that most people don't know Schrodinger's motivation behind this experiment, though. Why was this thought experiment developed? In short, Schrodinger asked if a cat locked in a box with a small amount of radioactive material and a device that would kill the cat if just a single atom deteriorated in a given amount of time. He asked, until that is measured, observed, he's asking if the cat is both alive and dead. You see, Schrodinger didn't much like the implications of the then new idea of quantum mechanics. Quantum theory, according to this experiment, implies that the cat remains both alive and dead until the state of the radioactive atom is observed. And Schrodinger was trying to debunk the idea with the absurd idea that the cat being both alive and dead, or two places at once. And there's the difference between Newtonian and quantum physics. A question, at the time, was the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum theory, which is still the most widely taught and accepted theory of quantum mechanics today. And according to that interpretation, the best quantum mechanics can do is make predictions based on probabilities. They say that the act of measuring causes the probabilities to reduce to only one at the point of measurement or observation, known as the wave function collapse. So nothing's definite until it's observed, they're saying. Of course, this is a very simplified version, and I don't claim to be an expert. But I do not blame Schrodinger to be a little bit skeptical of this idea, because quantum physics, quantum mechanics, puts our basic cause and effect universe in question. Because now we are introducing the idea that a third party that is not the cause and effect, not part of the original cause and not the effect, but the observation, this third party comes in and could possibly change things. So it puts our cause and effect universe in order, our Newtonian physics, or Newtonian universe in question. Puts everything in question. And it begs the question, what the hell is real and what is not? When we really grasp, really start to understand what quantum mechanics is teaching us, it really begs us the question, what is real? And the best it can do is only answer in probabilities, not in certainties. And it's probable that this is real, but there's a chance it's not. If, for example, we ask, is light a wave or a particle? Quantum mechanics says yes. It is both. And if you go looking for a particle, you will find light behaving as though it were particles traveling through space. And if you develop a test to see if it behaves like a wave, you will be rewarded with it doing just that. So, a handful of scientists claim that this is a picture of light doing both, acting as a wave and a particle, that they've actually photographed this particular phenomenon. Can anybody look at this and say, oh yes, that's exactly what that is? No. We'll have to take their word for it, right? We have to take their word, that this is what they say it is. And not just some neat little, colorful graphic. And we have to do that on a lot of things. Scientific, correctly? We have to assume that we're being told the whole story. And in this way, much of science is a lot like religion. Just as we are not all equipped to understand the intricacies of quantum mechanics or science in general, we are not all equipped to deal with the intricacies of religion. And so we look to the experts. And in both fields, we must be diligent. To blindly trust a man in a lab coat can be as dangerous as blindly trusting somebody in clerical collars. It's just as dangerous to trust them just because of the authority of their attire. Science has followed some very false leads in the past and taking us down some very dangerous roads. We have every reason to be suspicious that it will do so again. DDT, Agent Orange, this nuclear fallout. We're told this power plant is safe here right on the coast and on a major fault line. So that's safe though. It's 100% safe, and now we're paying the price. And scientists can just as easily be corrupted by money and power as religious leaders can. And with that being said, we should consider the words of the Christian reformer Martin Luther, who says that God writes the gospel not in the Bible alone, but also on trees and in the flowers and clouds and stars. So even though we need to be skeptical, we should at least see where the gospel of physics, which is the gospel, one of the gospels that nature gives, what is the gospel of the very small, what does it have to teach us about life and living? Well, we know we can't be in two places at once. But let's assume that it exists, this universe exists in we live in a both and reality, that as opposed to an either or dualistic as most people view. So most people say it's either black or white, good or bad, So we know physics, what this quantum mechanics says, things can be both. Light can be both wave and particle. So we live in a both and universe. It is not an either or universe. Let's assume that because we humans are part and particle of the overall system of existence, that our actions and our thoughts, intentions, and feelings really do affect the interdependent web of existence that we like to talk about. So that our presence, our observation, our thoughts, our actions do affect the larger whole in ways that we can understand. The ways that Schrodinger had a real problem with. Let us also assume that the universe is a constant state of flux, constantly in motion, always in a state of becoming. Which again, as they said, it's not really happening all at once. It's always a bunch of probabilities, and so nothing doesn't happen until it happens. Now I'll be honest, when I contemplate the universe implied by all this, implied by what quantum physics has to teach us, I keep getting stuck on how much it resembles certain philosophies of the East. The book, the Tao Te Ching, the book of the way, a book of change, says, the 42nd chapter of this book states, Tao gives birth to the one. One gave birth to two, two gave birth to three, three gave birth to all myriad things. So let's stop there for a second. When I read that, it brings to mind what we now call the Big Bang. The origins of our universe from which all things, including us, were born. What is called the Tao can be seen as the eternal no-thingness that pre-existed this universe and gave rise to all matter. The Tao Te Ching continues, So it reminds me of the Big Bang, because it was all nothingness, and then it was one, and then it was two, and then there was three, because you have the two, and you have that nothingness is still part of it. And it moves forward and it creates all things out of that. All atoms were created then, and later bigger ones were created, but everything started there. So the Tao Te Ching continues. All the myriad things carry the yin on their backs and holds the yang in their embrace, deriving their vital harmony from the proper blending of the two breaths. The symbol of the yin and yang is well known, and it is for me the perfect symbol for helping us understand the implications of modern physics. And most of us are familiar with, what the two sides represent, yang being positive, light, active, yin being the complementary forces of negative, darkness, and and passivity. So they're there, but they're complementary. It's important to understand the difference of being. It's not either or, either black or white. These are complementary. In Western philosophy and religions, these two forces tend to be pitted against each other in a battle for dominance. The battle of light over darkness, or good over evil, male over female, etc., etc. Man over nature. But here, just as we see in the natural world, the two forces are complementary. Because without the negative, there is no positive. The idea just falls away. If there isn't a negative, there can be no positive. Positive implies the negative. They imply each other. So both yin and yang are necessary in equal parts of the whole. So beyond these obvious things that most of us are aware of, there's more to this symbol. The outer circle. The outer circle reminds us that all is one. Both yin and yang. See, this isn't two things going on here. This is one. This is one thing. This is the one, two, and one, the three. The dots, the two dots, the black and white dots, indicate that nothing is absolute. In yang, there is yin, and yin, there is yang. The seed of one is always in the other, creating the movement that is implied by the shape. It implies some movement. And at the very center, at that point there, that very center point, it's called the Wuji, or the still point. It is the calm in the midst of the storm. It is stillness surrounded by motion. Now, I'm not arguing that physics provides proof of ancient Taoist thought. All I can say is there seems to be a correlation between what the ancient Taoists learned from their close observation of the natural world and what modern physicists are finding today. There's a correlation, I suspect, because they are using the same source material, the universe. They're just doing it at different scales. The biggest difference between the two is that the Taoists made the leap from observation, what is, and then extrapolated an ought. The Taoists recognize that because we are part of the system, we are one with the yin and the yang of things. This applies to us as well as everything else. We are included in that circle, in that oneness. And so they say it makes sense that we should work with that system instead of against it. We are part of it. The Tao Te Ching, above all things, in this book was an instruction manual for the ruling class of the time. That's what they were trying to do because they were the ones who could read. They were the ones who had all the power. So the second half of the chapter I read earlier states, what is more loathed by men than to be helpless? little, and worthless. And yet these are the very names the princes and barons called themselves. Truly one may gain by losing, and one may lose by gaining. What another has taught, let me repeat. A man of violence will come to a violent end. Whoever said that can be my teacher and my father. The way of the world today is teaching us this exact same thing again. What's going on in Virginia, what's going on in North Korea. Violence, this leads to more violence. Instructions that he was giving to the leaders of his time, Lao Tzu, the author here, was to make themselves small. To lead not from a place of power, but from a place of authority. Not by saying, oh, we're the king, we're in charge, but by showing and leading and how things can be done and managing the resources so that everybody benefits. The word Tao means way. It suggests that the way of nature is an instruction manual for us. It teaches us a way to live. Nature is there for us to observe and to see, oh, this is how things work. And we're part of that. Maybe we should pay attention to that. In this, the gospel of nature is still teaching us. It is forever revealing new truth for us to discover and apply. Now, the Tao Te Ching, contains a lot of great wisdom. I highly recommend it as a book to be studied. But it was written at a different time, and it was written for that time. And some of that wisdom is surely timeless, but some of it is clearly specific to that time and with what they knew then about the universe. And as we Unitarian Universalists like to say, revelation is not sealed. Truth can never be summed up in a single book for all time and for all circumstances. So modern science is exceptional at telling us how things work, how the universe is working, but it cannot begin to tell us why things are the way they are and why it should matter to us. Say, this is it. This is the way things are. Deal with it. I believe it is our role. I believe it is the role of religion to look for the why implied by the how. Just as the ancients looked to nature for clues on how to best live, I think it falls to us to do the same. I believe that is the role of the religious community, to help us figure out how to best live in the world. When we look for particles of light, we find them. When we look for waves, we find them too. And so the conclusion was the light consists of both waves and particles. And perhaps reality is similarly shaped by the perspective from which we are looking. What if our expectations define our experience of everything? Our expectations do define our experience of everything. You find what you're looking for in the world. A healthy religion, a healthy religious community helps us find meaning in the apparent meaningless of the universe. And it helps us to expand our perspective so that we're not forever locked into the limits of our own single perspective, our own limited expectations. In a few minutes, we're going to listen to the song Amazing Grace. To fully appreciate this classic hymn, It's important to know its history. Written by another Newton, John Newton, who had a religious experience that ultimately turned him from a captain of a slaving vessel to an Anglican priest and Britain's leading abolitionist. His religious experience and his religious training helped him to see outside the box of his own experience, and so recognize the immorality of his former life. It took some time, but he finally came to recognize that if what his experience taught him is true, and what he learned about what Jesus taught was true, then slavery is immoral. He needed the experience. He needed someone to help him translate that experience and then to put it into action. He needed a religious community. So as we roll into another church year, let us keep in mind the sacred duty we have to ourselves, each other, and the world. There are any number of service clubs, organizations that do good work in the community. But only a few religious communities are able to see beyond the limits of dogma and tradition. This makes ours a sacred duty. This is a sacred task we have. To create religious community. So that people can interpret their experience. They can interpret what is coming to light through science and through observation and through all these different forms of communication that we have access to now. How do they make sense of that? They need a religious community. They need you. They need Unitarian Universalism or something very like it. So ours is a sacred duty. And now it's up to us to decide if we're up for the task. May it be so.